now that we've calculated the variances, in this video I want to talk about how you can use those variances to make better decisions. And part of that is formatting the variances in a way that makes them easier to use and interpret. So first of all, let's just reiterate that what we've done here is we've taken this static budget variance, which is the difference between the budgeted income and the actual income, and we have unpacked it, broken it down into all of these variances right here. And if we highlight all of those, you can see that those add up to this total static budget number. Okay, so let's first talk about how you can format these variances in Excel so that they are easier to use. So I'm going to copy and paste these into a new worksheet. And I'll call this Using Variances. And I'm going to paste special and keep just the values, not the calculations, as well as the number formatting. Perfect. Okay, now notice I didn't bring in the static budget variance there. Let's go ahead and insert a new row. Now I'm going to give a name to these columns, so I'll just call this one name for budget name, and then amount and impact. So now one of the things that I want to do is make it possible to sort these variances. So if I just click somewhere in the column header here, and then in the Home tab, I can go to Sort and Filter and just add a filter in there. This will allow me to sort the variances in descending or ascending order. And this might be helpful so that we can really easily identify which variance on its own had the biggest impact on profit. And you can see that direct labor quantity variance is the biggest negative variance, or the biggest unfavorable variance. Okay. Now another thing you can do is conditionally format these so that the differences between the numbers are more meaningful. So if we highlight these cells here, we can use this conditional formatting in Excel. And we've got a lot of different options here. I'm going to go to color scales, and then I'm going to select a scale right here that has blue for large numbers, white for medium numbers, and red for low numbers. And that's supposed to be better for color blindness, okay, rather than green and red. All right, so there you see it. Now, one thing though we'd want to do is adjust this just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to re-highlight these, go back into conditional formatting and manage my rules. So this one rule right here, I want to edit. And I want to keep low values as red, high values as blue, but the midpoint I don't want to be based off of percentile, but based off of a number. And I want that midpoint number to be 0. That means there's no favorable or unfavorable variance. So now I can click OK, and apply it. Now you can see that even this direct labor price variance, instead of being white, it's a little bit pink. Okay, and now this is really helpful as well, so that you can easily, or maybe more easily, see the differences among these variances. All right, so that's one way of formatting these variances so that they are more usable. Now, another thing you can do is, if you have access to Tableau or Power BI, you can create some really cool interactive drill down visualizations. And I want to show you how you can do that in Tableau. So to do this, I need to create another column that I'll just call Input. And I'm going to label each of these rows here based on what type of input they are. So this first one is, I'll just put DL for direct labor. I'll put VMOH for variable manufacturing overhead, sales, and sales for the sales price and sales volume, DL for direct labor, FMOH for fixed manufacturing overhead, DM for the direct material price and quantity variance, and then VMOH for the variable manufacturing overhead price variance. All right, so I need that. Once I have that, I want to make sure that I save this file here so that I can read it into Tableau. Okay, now that I've saved this worksheet, I'm going to switch over to Tableau. And you may see a slightly different version of Tableau depending on the version you're using. But the first thing I want to do is connect to my file. So this is a Microsoft Excel file that I'm going to connect to. All right, now that I've connected to that file, I need to bring in this worksheet using variances that has that little table in it. And I can verify that I've got the data that I want here. All right, so you can see it right there. So I'll go to this worksheet, and the first thing I want to do is create a set. So I'm essentially going to go to this input field here, and click on this down arrow, and then go to create set. And I will call this input set. Okay, so I rename that to input set. And I basically just need to say, hey, this value will be used with a set of other values. So I'll leave it like that, click OK, and now I see the input set here on the left. The next thing is I need to create a calculated field that will allow me to drill down. So I'll click on this, and I'll call this drill to name. And I need to enter the actions that this will take. So if input set, okay, if that is selected, then we want it to drill down to the name. So I need to put brackets around it to indicate it's a field in my data set. Otherwise, we want to leave it as the input and then end. Okay, then we'll click OK. Now we've got drill to name here. Now the last thing I need to do before I can start making my visualization is add an action. So I'll go up to worksheet and go to actions, and I'll click on add action, and I want to change set values, and I will call this subcategory drill, and I need to make sure that this is for this worksheet that I have here. And then we'll go to the target set, which is again this worksheet, and the input set, so that's that set that we created. And the action that we want to take is to remove all values from the set when we clear the selection. That allows us to go down and then back up again. Now I can click OK and OK. All right, and now we can build the visualization. So we'll drag input to the rows, and after that we'll drag in this new drill to name to the rows, and the dollar amount is the amount. So we'll drag that to the columns there. So we want to remove this input column here because it's kind of redundant. So I'll go up to this input pill and remove this check mark by show in header. So now we've just got the drill to name. And this is actually a really helpful bar graph right here. This allows us to see both the magnitude and the directional impact. We can real quickly see that direct labor, sales, and variable manufacturing overhead all have a negative impact on profit, whereas direct material and fixed manufacturing overhead have a positive impact. Now the cool thing is if I want to drill down into direct labor, I can click on that, and it breaks it down into the direct labor price and quantity. So now I can see more specifically with indirect labor, it's that quantity variance that is making up the biggest negative or unfavorable variance there. Similarly with variable manufacturing overhead, I can see that that quantity variance is the largest part, and then the price variance is actually positive. All right, and so I think this is really helpful. It allows you to kind of see overall what's happening, and you can drill back out by just clicking on one of those again, or actually twice, to go back to kind of the high level. You can even change it to a tree map. It's a little bit tricky here because we've got some negative numbers here. And so if you click on this 3 negatives and say, hey, we can use absolute values, then it's pretty cool that it uses these reddish, orangish colors to indicate negative amounts, blue colors to indicate positive amounts. If I want to drill down further, I can click on that direct labor, and now it shows me the direct labor price variance right there. If I want to drill back up, I click on it again, twice again, and it goes back up to the high level. So let's look at variable manufacturing overhead. I click on it once. Here's the variable overhead quantity variance and the variable overhead price variance. Okay, so it uses these rectangles and colors to show you real quickly the largest amounts and the directional impact. So I think this is a pretty helpful way to visualize variances. Now, let's go back over now to just Excel here. Let's also talk about how to use these variances for making decisions. So I think the key thing that I want to highlight is that these variances don't tell us conclusively that, hey, it was the production manager that was the source of our problem here. Okay, it could have been the case that the materials purchases manager purchased this low quality material, and that's why they have a favorable variance. They paid less than expected. somehow they didn't use as much of it, but maybe they had to spend a lot of time getting used to that lower quality material. And so it took them a lot longer to make what they wanted to make. And because of that, they had to pay a little bit extra in wages. Maybe it's overtime. Okay, so even though each of these numbers is like the isolated impact, it doesn't mean that there can't be interactions among all these variances here. So really the most useful thing is that this can help you decide who to talk to or where to start looking to gather more information. So I hope this presentation has helped give you some ideas for how you can use variances to create actionable insight.